You know, I've been thinking, maybe BMW's just getting too soft for me.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with exoticcarplayplace. And today...
So BMW used to take a great pride in the motto that they used, ultimate driving machine. But back in 2006, the marketing director did some research and it told him that people were actually intimidated by the sporting intentions of the brand, and they would sell far more vehicles if the brand catered and marketed to the broader audience. So as a result of that, there was a very intentional shift to a new motto called the joy of driving. So this whole thing became very evident and apparent to me because as a BMW and true sporting enthusiast, I had a lot of stake in the cars that BMW was creating. For example, they created some of the absolute best race style engines, hand-built crafted engines with a real sporting intention. For example, the S54 inline 6-cylinder engine, it was normally aspirated in the M3 just a few generations ago. There was also that glorious S62 V8 engine that we found in the previous E39 generation M5. It is still truly one of the most beloved engines. How about the wonderful high-screaming S65 V8 engine that's found in the previous generation M3? It is still an animal and still highly sought after. And how can we ever forget that glorious F1-inspired S85 V10 engine that you can find in the E60 M5? Still to this day, one of the best engines in the BMW arsenal. So these were all highly focused, no compromise, high performance engines derived by a department that really strived to make some of the best engines in the business. Another added bonus from those generations was those engines were exclusive for specific models. There was not any cross-sharing or contamination. That engine was designed for that car, that engine was designed for that car. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, if you look at today's M cars, it's an entirely different marketplace. BMW is doing a lot of things to reduce costs and really, for marketing purposes, is really shoehorning the same drivetrain in multiple different models. For example, the current M3, M4 engine is that turbocharged, twin turbocharged inline 6, which is absolutely a glorious powertrain. However, they've gone and stuffed that in numerous cars, from the M2 and M2 Competition and the M2 CS, as well as the M3 and M4 cars. It's actually utilized in a lot of different cars. How about the V8 twin turbocharged engine of 4.4 liter displacement? Now that's shoehorned in many different cars. The M5, M5 Competition, M8, M8 Competition. How about the X5M? How about the X6M? And many more. So now sadly, even the high performance M engines are just spread out wildly. And they're actually spread out more than Billy's sister at prom night. More examples, how about non-M cars? For example, the new B58, and I've praised it. It is a great engine, no doubt about it, but they're shoehorning that into almost every single car available in the lineup. You can find it in a 240i, 340i, soon to be 440i, X3 M40i, X5 40i, and the Z4, which is coincidentally the same chassis as the new Toyota Supra, which also uses that B58 engine. Now, don't get me wrong, these are all exceptionally great cars to drive, and I've praised virtually every single one of them. I've driven all of them. They're great, spectacular machines. However, there is essentially a key ingredient missing from all of these cars. So ultimately, in an attempt for BMW to satisfy the masses and cater to a much, much broader audience, they've somehow forgotten a lot of the passion for the true enthusiasts, even though that group is much smaller. So you're asking me, how can I even say that BMW's lost touch with the true driving enthusiasts, when especially they created cars like the M4 GTS or the M2 CS or Competition, as these cars have a true sporting spirit and as well they evolve and get better year upon year. Well, really, I like to look at it like this. Looking at the history of a car, for example, like the M5, which essentially goes back several generations, and it was really a focused car that was high performance, meant to do high speeds, but was able to do some racing along the way. And of course, always came with some sort of a manual gearbox. Then a few years ago, the E60 M5 comes along and you could get either a manual or the goofy SMG3 gearbox, which is an automated manual, but essentially still ran a lot like a manual transmission. Then along came the F10, the next generation, which you were still able to get in a manual transmission or a double clutch transmission, which still truly does inspire the automotive enthusiast, because you can still roll the gears or you can pull the paddle shifters, which still does function in a hardcore manner. And it really is a good match for the M5's sporting intentions. And along comes the F90 M5, which arguably is the fastest M5 to date, and arguably one of the fastest Euro sedans ever, as well as probably the fastest BMW ever produced in history. But yet, with all that performance, the essence, the very performance essence seems to be missing. And it's lost in a smoky cloud of technology and 8-speed automatic transmission, which has been grossly overutilized and doubled up and used in many other models within the brand. It's just a watered down, overutilized powertrain combination. So where is the exclusivity gone? Where is the uniqueness gone? Well, sadly, BMW has widened its focus to the general population. Remember, the M5 isn't for everybody. It's for the diehards. There's many other different versions of the 5 Series that are available for the general population. Why doesn't BMW remember that and create a car that it truly does match the sporting intentions of the enthusiasts that love that car from the get-go? Do you remember a few years ago when Porsche made the same mistake? They had that wonderful GT3, and everybody's aware of that. That is arguably one of the best street track cars available. A few years ago, they stopped producing the car with a manual gearbox. As a matter of fact, they only provide it with the PDK, which is Porsche's dual clutch transmission. Let me tell you, the Porsche enthusiasts were rolling in their graves. Me, myself, as well as a true Porsche enthusiast, was really disappointed to hear the fact that you could not even get a manual. We all know that the double clutch is superior in a track environment, but not everybody wants to use that car from point and squirt on a racetrack. Some people like that GT3 in the back roads in the woods on a Sunday morning. This drastic mistake almost crushed and destroyed Porsche as we know it. As a matter of fact, there was so much noise and uproar that Porsche quickly decided to revert that and went back to offering a manual gearbox as a potential option. Now, sadly, on top of all of this, did you know that BMW in their most recent G23 series car has finally given up the manual gearbox altogether? That's right, this car was the small, compact, taut, sporting experience that people went to if they didn't necessarily want to go all in and expend on the M cars. So yes, in fact, the bean counters got their way and stopped providing the 3 Series with a manual gearbox simply because the tooling cost more money. To have that option available cost the company some cash, just for the sake of squeezing out an ounce of profit. Now, sadly, on top of all of this, did you know the vast majority of BMWs now are sold with xDrive? Did you also know that there is also a front-wheel drive version of a BMW model? That is absolutely painful to hear. BMW really was the go-to for performance driving. Now, moving on to the next topic of why these cars, I believe, truly are softened up to the point where they're not truly the driver's car, and that is the sound effects. There literally are no sound effects coming out of the exhaust because most of these cars now are turbocharged. And turbocharging does, in fact, drastically muffle the engine sound. Nothing really sounds like the normally aspirated cars that we found just a decade ago. For example, the E60 M5 with that glorious V10, or that glorious V8 that came in the E90 M3, or even the previous E39 generation M5 with that normally aspirated V8. They all had spectacularly great sound effects and soundtracks that they are hard to forget. And those are the reasons why people are starting to seek out the older generation cars, is for the feedback, the sound, the enjoyment, the vibration, the interaction with the gearbox, and all of that. It is truly a driver's car. Today's car, not so much. Now, you know what they do for sound effects? Did you know this? They actually pump fake engine sounds through the speakers. What do you think is going to happen 10 years down the road after you overplay and overdrive your stereo to the point where the speakers start getting muffled and vibrate? You know how those sound. Is that going to make the engine sound awkward as well? I think so. So what about the next factor with these current generation BMWs? And that is essentially the overuse of technology and innovation, which truly is a double-edged sword because the intent is to make vehicles safer, more environmentally friendly, and more appealing to the general populace. And how is this all done? By adding a lot more power, a lot more automation, heated seats, digital dashboards, electronic swipe card access, everything that you see in these cars today was there to try to cater to the customer and bring new clientele into the brand. So this all seems very, very positive, and largely it is. Everybody likes to see new technology, new comfort features, new performance levels. Everything is very interesting year upon year. And it is really considered moving forward by the vast majority of the population. So of course everything has a flip side, and that actually is now increased weight with all this new technology. So now the weight creates a weight deficit, the weight deficit creates a need for increased power, and this vicious cycle just goes round and round. And how its size and proportions are very much in line with the 3 Series or M3 car from 2 generations ago. The car has grown that much in the last 10 years. These cars are really getting out of hand in terms of size and weight. So ultimately, in short, is BMW getting too soft for me? The long answer is really yes and no. So the general company direction is one in which where they're creating so many models and try to create submodels upon submodels to the point where everything is so watered down, everything shares the same drivetrains, and it's all becoming a blur. They're really essentially the same model repeated over and over and over. And with all of this happening, there's currently not a whole lot special with the vast majority of the BMW model lineup. It's actually a little bit disappointing, to be quite frank. With all of this said, as long as BMW does not forget the enthusiasts and continue to develop the M cars to which they should be, and provide transmissions, for example, like manual transmissions, dual clutch transmissions, really essentially give up all the autos for the hardcore M cars, and continue to develop individual personalities into each and every single M car like they used to do back in the 80s and the 90s, all the while pushing the envelope for increased performance and development to gain a further stranglehold on the performance genre within the industry, and ultimately land back in a place where unique engine configurations are truly based on exclusivity. That, my dudes, will continue to energize the fanboys of the BMW M brand and allow BMW to stay true to the motto, ultimate driving machine. Pow! Thanks a lot, everybody. Hey, if you want to see a great video, the best BMW gets even better right over here. If you just want to subscribe to the channel and see more great videos, be sure to hit the subscribe button right down over here. As well, don't forget to hit the notifications bell, let you know when the next great video appears. Hope to see you guys real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.